right. Okay, friends, we're going to start. We've been talking about habitats. Can you remember some of the habitats we've already talked about, Kellen? Think about the pictures that in the stories we've already read about. Some other habitats. Be thinking, Elliot. The desert is one. What other habitat have we learned about? The Arctic tundra. What else, Layla? The savanna, also known as the grasslands. And what else? Anything else? I think those are the only three we've covered so far. The desert, the savanna, and the Arctic tundra. So today we're going to learn about a new habitat, but this is one that you're going to be very familiar with because this is one that is close to the area that we live. So we're going to be learning about a forest today. Do you think all forests are the same? No, all forests are not the same. Raise your hand if you've ever been to a forest. Okay, tell me what you see when you go to a forest. What do you see? What are some things that you see? Manuel? Trees, good. What else do you see when you go to a forest? Layla? Bears, maybe. What else do you see when you go to a forest? Birds. What else do you see? Lakes, maybe. Okay, let's take one more. What do you think, Jordan? What do you see when you go to a forest? Bugs, yeah, insects, good. All right, hands down for just a minute. So today we are going to talk about a type of forest that is really close to where we live, and it's called the temperate deciduous forest. The temperate deciduous forest. So we have a map of the world, okay, and all of these yellow areas are where temperate deciduous forests are located, and we're going to be in the United States today talking about a temperate deciduous forest that is in Tennessee and North Carolina, and it is the Great Smoky Mountains. Raise your hand if you've ever been to the Great Smoky Mountains. A lot of us probably have. So we're going to be talking about the Great Smoky Mountains, and in the Great Smoky Mountains we have some temperate deciduous forests. It is called the Great Smoky Mountains because the mountains have a blue-gray mist around them, and it kind of looks smoky. So that's why we call them the Smoky Mountains. Yes, Jordan?
I've been to a forest, and my parents have been because sometimes me and my parents go frisbee golf forest.
Oh, okay. So you've been to a forest also. Yes, Violet? We learned about the Arctic Ocean, you're right. Okay, hands down for a minute because we're going to read about this forest, okay? So this is a picture of the Great Smoky Mountains that we said some of us have been to. We can see that blue-gray mist kind of makes it look smoky. See lots of trees. Okay, and now we are inside the forest with Rattenborough. Rattenborough here with the next thrilling chapter in our Habitat Read-Alouds. After looking at some very exotic or strange and fascinating faraway places, I thought we could visit a habitat that is quite common in many parts of the United States. This is a forest habitat. You know you're in a forest habitat when everywhere you look, you see trees all around you. You may be wondering why I'm up in a tree. Well, I'm enjoying the wonderful view of a forest in North America. There are over 500,000 acres of forest in this national park. Okay, 500,000 acres, that's a lot of land. An acre is about the size of a football field, and there's 500,000 acres in this forest. Many of you may have seen forests like this before, either in real life or in books. You may be familiar with some of the plants and animals that live here in the Smoky Mountains. A lot of them live in many other places all over the United States. Okay, so does this look like a familiar forest to you? Have you seen trees that look like this before? Have you seen leaves that look like that before? Probably a lot of us have, because this is going to be a forest that we are familiar with. This is not an exotic place that we've talked about like the desert and the Arctic tundra where many of us have not traveled. This is going to be something that you're familiar with. Yes, Joseph?
I think it's winter.
You think it might be winter? Why do you think that it might be winter? That's a good guess. It's actually, when did the leaves usually turn colors? What season? Fall. So it's getting close to winter, but I actually think it's probably fall. All right, let's keep reading for a minute. If you got a question or a comment, try to save it for a second. Okay, what do you notice in this picture?
Tall trees.
Lots of tall trees. There are many different kinds of forests in the world. The forests of the Smoky Mountains are called temperate forests. Can you say temperate? A temperate forest grows in an area that has 4 seasons, including a warm summer and a cold winter, and receives steady rainfall throughout the year, okay? So a temperate forest has how many seasons? 4, and it has steady rainfall. This forest is also called a deciduous forest because it is full of deciduous plants. Everybody say deciduous. Okay, it's full of deciduous plants, trees, bushes, and shrubs that lose their leaves every fall. Joseph just pointed out that tree was losing its leaves. That's what makes that tree deciduous. Then they grow leaves again when the temperatures start to rise in the spring. The temperate deciduous forest has a much friendlier climate than the other habitats we've learned about, and it can support many different kinds of plants and animals, okay? So we've talked about some different types of climates that don't support a lot of plants and animals, like the desert and the tundra, but this climate is going to support a lot of plants and animals because we live in a friendlier climate. What do you think climate means? What is a climate? What is a climate? What do you think that means? We live in a friendlier climate than the desert or than the tundra. What do you think, Layla? A friendlier place. Climate has to do with weather over a long period of time. We live in Tennessee where we have 4 seasons. Okay, so our weather is usually okay. It's pretty easy for animals and people to live here. If we lived in the tundra, that's not an easy place for people to live and animals to live, okay? So temperate means not extremely hot, not extremely cold, okay? And then deciduous means that what happens to the leaves on the trees? They fall, okay? So a temperate deciduous forest means the weather's pretty good, not too hot, not too cold, and the leaves fall, okay, in the fall time. Okay, we got another picture of the forest. What do you notice shining through the trees? The sun. A temperate deciduous forest is made up of broadleaf trees like oak, maple, beech, and elm. These trees grow very tall and are thickly covered with wide leaves that are better at collecting sunlight than other trees, like pine trees that have needles instead of leaves. Under these taller trees, there are saplings, which are young trees. Sapling is another word for a young tree, as well as shrubs, bushes, and plants that bear or produce fruit. Closer to the ground grow shorter plants like grasses and wildflowers. So these are all trees that are in Tennessee. They're trees that we're familiar with. This is a picture of an oak tree. What is this a picture of right here? Some kind of nut. What kind of nut do you think it is? You think you know? Keep thinking. Demarion, you think you know?
I've seen them before.
You've seen them before. Starts with an A. What do you think? Layla?
Oak.
This is an oak tree, but what kind of seed? What do you think, Jackson? I heard Joseph. Joseph, what is it?
Acorn.
It's an acorn. Guess what? If you planted that acorn, guess what it would grow into? An oak tree. Let's read about this oak tree. I'm going to start at the top and work my way down so I can show you this wonderful habitat. The tree I'm standing in now is an oak tree. This oak is very tall and is covered with leaves and acorns. An acorn is a seed, and if it gets planted in the forest soil, it can grow roots and a shoot, which will eventually turn into an oak sapling. Like the saguaro cactus in the desert and the acacia tree in the savanna, oak trees provide shelter and food for many animals. Owls, woodpeckers, mice, and foxes make their homes in the branches or around the roots of the oak tree. And acorns are food for squirrels, birds, deer, and other animals. Okay? So why is an oak tree important to animals? Why is an oak tree important to animals? Elliot? Animals can eat the acorns. Why else is an oak tree important to animals? What else did it say that an oak tree provides for animals? You think? Some animals use this tree as their what? Layla? As their home. Lots of animals live in trees. That's their shelter. And they also use the tree for food. So it's a very important place for the animals. Yes, Jordan?
If you pull off the acorns, will the acorns, or they're green, turn brown?
They do eventually turn brown. You're right. Yes, Violet?
Why are they green?
Usually they're probably fresh and new. They may not be ripe yet, but that's probably why they're green. All right, so now on the next page, we're going to learn about some insects. Look at that tasty insect. Does that look tasty to you? But Rattenborough probably thinks it looks tasty. Well, the oak tree is home for hundreds of different kinds of insects, like the stink bug and the weevil, which eat its leaves and acorns. So be listening to these animals that are going to use the oak tree as food. Moths and butterflies lay their eggs in the tree. Other insects like ants and timber beetles live under the bark of the oak or in dead and fallen trees. Just as insects are drawn to the oak as a source of food, so are animals that feed on insects. Spiders and all kinds of birds hunt for tasty bugs among the branches of the oak tree. Bears and other animals find food here too. The oak tree is an amazing habitat in itself. Yes, Jordan?
What bug is it evil?
A weevil. It's a little insect. So some of these bugs use the oak tree, and what do they do with the oak tree? These weevils and the stink bug, what do they use the oak tree for? Jocelyn? Food. Good. They use it for food. And what else? Violet?
They use it for laying eggs.
Okay, they lay eggs on the oak tree. The butterfly lays eggs on the oak tree. What else, Jordan?
Wait, what is that?
What else do they use the oak tree for, the insects? They use it at...
Habitat?
It's their habitat. Very good. That's their home. And then other animals that like to eat insects can come to the oak tree. And what are they going to get to do? Eat all the bugs. So lots of animals use this oak tree as their habitat. Okay? Yes, Jordan?
I think a weevil can sting you.
You think so? I don't know. I don't think that they can. Yes, Camille?
How can bugs drink water?
They have mouths just like we do. Yeah. All right, let's find our next picture. All right, here's our next picture. What do you see in this picture? Berries. Down on the forest floor, there are all kinds of shrubs, the fruits of which are food to many different species of animals, including rabbits, chipmunks, deer, and omnivores like bears. Raise your hand if you remember what an omnivore is. Who remembers what an omnivore is? Manuel, do you think you remember?
Yes.
What?
It's a plant eater.
Good, you're close. It's a plant eater, but it's also something else. Kellen? It's a meat eater too. So a bear is an omnivore. It eats plants and meat. Some of these blueberries are perfectly ripe and they taste delicious. What a tasty treat. Down here on the ground, I can see wildflowers, grasses, and clover. These plants, which cover the forest floor, are home to many types of insects and are food to grazing animals such as deer and mice. One interesting thing about the plants in a forest is that they often grow leaning in the same direction. Isn't that strange? Why do you think plants might grow and lean in the same direction? Why would a plant start leaning? What do you think would cause that? What do you think would cause that? Jackson, what do you think? Wind, that's a good guess, and that might cause some plants to lean a little bit. But there's another reason. I want you to listen. We're going to find out why some plants lean a little bit. Well, they have to do this because they are looking for sunlight. The leaves of the big trees get all the sun. Only a small amount of sunlight gets through the forest floor. That's why it's so shady in here. The plants down here have to grow toward the sun so they can get enough light to make the food they need to survive. So why do some plants lean? What are they looking for? Jordan? What are they? They're looking for sunlight. They're leaning towards the sunlight. Why is there not a lot of sunlight in the forest? Why is there not a lot of sunlight? Joseph?
Because there's a lot of trees.
There's a lot of trees blocking the sunlight. So the plants have to lean. When they can find a little bit of sunlight, they lean towards it. All right, let's look at the next page. Okay, we're going to learn about another plant in the forest. You may have seen this fuzzy green stuff growing on rocks, trees, and the ground in forests or countryside. What do you think that fuzzy green stuff is called?
Grass.
Moss. Good. Mosses are small green plants that grow in clumps in damp and shaded places. They cover parts of the forest floor like a carpet and are home to many small animals and insects. It feels really soft to walk on thick and spongy, and it's thick and spongy and it tickles a bit. Now we're going to take a look at some of the animals that live here. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park is home to almost 400 different kinds of animals. Animals that live in the temperate deciduous forest are adapted to living in a habitat with 4 seasons. Yes, Jordan.
On the first page before this, how can plants move if they're not alive?
Well, they are alive. Plants are alive. Yeah, they can move a little bit. They can a little bit because they move towards the sunlight. Yeah. They can't move like we can, but they can move a little bit. Okay, so we're going to learn about some animals in the Smoky Mountains. Do you remember how many different types of animals there are in the Smoky Mountains, Layla?
Types of bears?
There are bears. Do you remember how many types of animals it said, though, Jocelyn? 400. Lots of different types of animals. And we know that these animals have adapted to living in an environment with 4 seasons. I want you to discuss with someone close to you. You're going to whisper and you're going to discuss the 4 seasons. Try to think of what the 4 seasons are and tell me a little bit about them. I want you to whisper to your neighbor. Tell me a little bit about the 4 seasons. I'm going to give you a few more seconds, then I want you guys to share. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Raise your hand. I want you to share the 4 seasons with me, and I want you to tell me a little bit about each of the seasons. So give me one season and tell me a little bit about it. Okay, make sure you got it in your head. Make sure you're on your bottom. Jocelyn, tell me one season. Winter. What do you know about winter time? It's usually cold. Good. Violet, tell me another season. Spring. What do you know about the springtime?
It's kind of warm.
Okay, it's getting a little bit warmer in the springtime. Good. Tell me another season. Jordan?
Sunny.
Okay, well, when is it usually the most sunny and the most warm? What season? Can you help him out, Sophia? Summer. Good. And then one more. Fall. Tell me something about fall.
It's kind of cold.
It's getting a little bit colder. Good. We've talked about the leaves are falling during the fall. So these animals are used to living in 4 seasons. Okay. What do you see here?
Raccoon.
What do you see? Oh, not a raccoon, Kellen. A squirrel. We see squirrels all the time. This is an animal that we see all the time. Let's learn about this squirrel. What do you think the squirrel's eating? A nut, some kind of nut. Let's read about the squirrel. Let's start with the mighty oak tree again. This amazing tree is home to many animals, and I'm standing at the nest of one of them, the gray squirrel. This little animal is covered in warm gray-brown fur with a white chest and a long, bushy tail. Squirrels live in holes in the trunks of trees or in nests high up in the trees like this one. Their nests are built from twigs, leaves, moss, and grass. Squirrels use their strong black legs and sharp claws to help them leap from tree to tree, to run up and down tree trunks, and they use their tails to help them balance. Squirrels are omnivores and spend most of their time looking for food. What's an omnivore again? Layla? Plant eater and a meat eater. The squirrel eats mostly acorns from the oak tree, but it also eats nuts, mushrooms, berries, seeds, and even bird eggs and insects. This squirrel might nibble on an acorn or 2 now, but it will also bury and store or save many acorns underground, so it will have them in the winter when other food is hard to find. Okay, so tell me a little bit about this squirrel. What have you learned about this squirrel? What do you know about the squirrel? something you learned about the squirrel. Think about what it eats, where it lives, what it looks like. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Raise your hand and share me something that you learned about squirrels. Jocelyn. They eat bird eggs sometimes. What else? Its tail helps it balance. That's pretty interesting. It keeps it from falling off the branches. What else, Sophia? It eats acorns. What else?
It gathers acorns and takes them to their home for the winter.
I was actually going to ask about that. It gathers acorns and it stores them for the winter. Why do you think it has to do that? Raise your hand and tell me. Why do you think the squirrel needs to do that? Camille?
Because in the winter they can't get any acorns because
There's not as much food during the winter time because what happens to the trees during the winter time? Their leaves fall and they almost look dead. Are they really dead? Because it's winter time right now. No, but they look like it, but they're really just resting. But the squirrels can't find as much food in the winter time. All right, let's keep reading. Was that a picture of an owl? We already learned about the elf owl. Where did the elf owl live? Do you remember? Elliot? Close. The desert. So this is an owl that we're going to learn about that lives in the deciduous forest. This is a barred owl. A barred owl lives in a hole in this oak tree. I have to be careful because owls are carnivores. What does carnivore mean? Layla? They eat other animals. Unlike the elf owl in the desert, this owl happens to enjoy eating rats. This owl also eats other small animals like mice, insects, and even other birds. Owls have very good hearing and excellent eyesight, which allows them to find their prey easily in the thick forest. Owls are nocturnal, which means they only come out at night. So I have some time before this one is ready for a late night snack. Okay, how are animals able to get their prey so easily? How are these owls able to get their prey so easily? Raise your hand. Jordan?
Because they can fly.
Okay, they can fly, so that definitely helps them. What else? Layla?
Because they have good eyesight and good hearing.
Good. They have really good hearing and really good eyesight. It said that owls are nocturnal. What does that mean? Manuel?
They sleep at day and wake up at night.
Very good. They sleep during the day and they hunt during the night. Yes, Joseph?
That owl likes to, if someone tries to hurt that owl, it would try to defend people.
Probably try to defend itself.
Girl owl. I can tell because of her eyes.
You think so? That's interesting. I don't know how to tell. We'll have to research that and see if that's correct. All right, so on this page, we're going to learn about another animal in the deciduous forest. What animal is that? Black bear. Raise your hand if you've ever seen a bear. You ever seen a bear? If you've gone to the Smoky Mountains, you might have seen a bear. Yes, Violet?
My mom loves baby bears.
Does she? They are pretty cute.
Raccoons and possums.
They are pretty cute. Yes, Jocelyn? Shh, listen, Jocelyn's talking.
I didn't really see the bear, but I saw it one time, and the other time I just heard a story about one bear tore my grandma's car up.
Oh my goodness. Was she in the mountains?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. That's dangerous. All right, let's read about the black bears. Ready? Hold on. What's that scratching sound coming from below? It's a black bear. Black bears are common in North American temperate deciduous forests, and there are more than 1,000 in this national park. They are large animals. They weigh as much as 14 first graders would weigh all together. And when they stand on their hind legs, they can be taller than a person. Bears are omnivores and hibernate or sleep during the winter in hollowed out trees or caves. Okay, so bears are omnivores. Raise your hand and tell me, what is an omnivore? What is an omnivore? Who can remember? What is an omnivore? Kellen? Eats meat and plants. And it also said that they hibernate during the winter. What does that mean? They hibernate during the winter. Jordan? What does hibernate mean? Keep thinking. Jackson, what do you think?
They sleep in the winter.
They sleep in the winter. Let's read about that. When they are hibernating, bears use less energy and they do not need to eat any food for many, many days. This is a good thing because during the winter, the foods that bears eat are scarce. What is that? What do you think that means? The food that bears eat is scarce during the winter. What do you think that means? Scarce. Layla?
Warm?
Good guess, but no. The food that they eat, do you think there's a lot of it during the winter or not a lot of it? Not a lot of it. So scarce means it's hard to find. Bears are covered in thick black or brown fur, and they have sharp claws to strip the bark off of trees to uncover the insects that live there. So bears are some of the animals that eat the insects that live in the trees. This bear will use its long, sticky tongue to get into every crack to hunt out the insects, and they'll make a delicious meal for him, I'm sure. Would you like to eat insects?
Yes.
But this bear is getting a nice meal from that tree. What is that? I think, raise your hand if you've seen a deer. I think we've all seen deer. See them all the time. All right, let's read about some deer. What do you notice on this deer? Antlers. I just saw a deer through the trees. Deer often live in the temperate deciduous forest because it is such a good place to stay hidden. But they often hunt for food in neighboring meadows. This is a buck. A buck is a male deer, and we can tell this because the male deer has antlers. That's how you can tell if it's a male. Did you know that a buck's antlers fall off every year and they grow back again? Did you know that their antlers fall off?
I learned
That's interesting. Isn't that interesting? Yes, Violet?
I seen a deer at my pop-pop's house. She was a baby one and a mama one.
I've seen a lot out recently. I'm going to take one more question, then we're going to keep reading. Yes, Jocelyn?
And a female deer is called a doe.
Good. We're going to learn about that in just a second. A female deer is called a doe. All right, hands down for a second. Let's keep reading. Bucks mark their territory by stripping the bark off trees with their antlers. A territory is an area where an animal or group of animals lives. Animals often protect their territory and they try to keep other animals out of it. Bucks also use their antlers for fighting with other male deer. This deer is a white-tailed deer. Its coat is tan right now, but in the winter, it will change to gray-brown, and it has patches of white on its underside. This helps the deer to be camouflaged or hidden in its environment. We've talked about the word camouflage. Raise your hand and remind me, what does camouflage mean? I want you to answer this question for me. What does camouflage mean? Make sure you're on your bottom so I can see everybody's hand. What does camouflage mean? Camille?
It means like you're maybe like trying to hide.
Okay, it helps the animals hide. Why would a deer be camouflaged in a deciduous forest? Look at this deer. Why would a deer be camouflaged in a deciduous forest? What do you think, Jackson?
Trees are brown and it's brown.
Trees are brown, and this deer is brown. Why else do you think? What else do you think would help the deer be camouflaged in a deciduous forest? Jocelyn? Okay, tell me more.
Like in the winter, like the grass may be like brownish.
Okay, there's not a lot of green grass, there's not a lot of green trees in the winter, so he's going to blend in with the brown around him. Yep, what else?
Like if a deer is black and there's a black wall, then the deer can stay there and the deer will be camouflaged.
Okay, and also, what does the deer have on its head? Antlers. What do the antlers kind of look like, Layla?
They kind of look like,
If you were in the forest, what might it look like?
kind of like a weapon.
Okay, they do use it as a weapon. What do you think it looks like, Elliot?
It looks like a tree.
It kind of looks like tree branches. So it can camouflage itself in the forest. Okay, this is another deer we're going to read about. What is that deer doing? Jumping, maybe running. Let's find out. Deer graze on grasses and eat tree leaves, berries, and acorns, among other things. They mostly come out to feed at night when the light is low, and they rest during the day. This white-tailed deer has strong, long legs, which are good for running and jumping and for escaping from predators like wolves and coyotes and people. The temperate deciduous forest climate can support many different plants and animals because it has 4 seasons. It is called temperate because it never gets too cold like the Arctic or too hot like the Sonoran Desert. There's a steady rate of rainfall throughout the year so plants can grow and animals can have food and water to keep them alive. This is just one of the many kinds of forests in the world. Next, we're going to take a look at another kind. It's going to be very different in a lot of ways. I'll see you on our next adventure. Okay, so what kind of deer was that? Do you remember what it said? It's not a buck. Well, what was it, Jocelyn? It doesn't have antlers, so it's a female deer. So what is it? A doe. This is called a doe. And this doe has really strong legs, so it can get away from what? Raise your hand and tell me. What does this doe want to get away from? Wolves. Good. What else? What else? Sophia? Coyotes. What else, Layla?
It's trying to get away from predators.
Predators. Good. People that are animals or people that are hunting it would be called predators. Okay, so we've learned about the temperate deciduous forest today. I'm going to ask you a few questions about what we've learned. Okay, so I want to see some hands in the air. Raise your hand and tell me, are all forests the same? Yes or no? Raise your hand and tell me, are all forests the same? No, they're not. We learned about the temperate deciduous forest. We're going to learn about some other forests later in our habitat unit, and they're going to be completely different than the forest that we're used to. Okay? Who can describe a temperate deciduous forest? Raise your hand if you can describe a temperate deciduous forest. Tell me about it. Oh, my goodness. I need to see lots of hands. Violet, make sure you're sitting up. Describe a temperate deciduous forest. What do you know about it? Think about the weather. What do you know about it? Jackson?
It's sunny.
Okay. Sometimes it's sunny. What else? What else do we know about the forest? The temperate deciduous forest. Jocelyn?
It has a lot of trees.
It has lots of trees. Good. What else, Kellen? Is it cold all the time?
No.
What do we know about the temperate deciduous forest? Keep thinking. Be listening. Sophia, what do you know? It's not cold all the time. What do we know? Sometimes it's warm because how many seasons does a temperate deciduous forest? 4. Good. So we know that it has 4 different seasons. All right, I'm going to show you a picture of one of the animals we just read about, and I want to ask you some questions about it. Okay, what animal is this? The gray squirrel. Raise your hand and tell me, where does the gray squirrel find shelter? Where does it find shelter usually? Manuel?
Trees.
In trees. Good. What is some food that a gray squirrel might like to eat? Nuts, acorns. What else? What is some other food that it might like to eat?
Bugs.
Bugs. Jocelyn, can you think of something else? Bird eggs, good. And then can you tell me if a gray squirrel is a carnivore, an herbivore, or an omnivore? Raise your hand if you can tell me if a gray squirrel is a carnivore, an herbivore, or an omnivore. What do you think, Jackson? An omnivore, which means it eats plants and meat, like insects or bird eggs. Okay? What type of animal was this? Black bear. Again, raise your hand and tell me, what might a black bear eat? What do you think?
Honey.
Okay, maybe some honey. What else? Try to think back to some of the things that insects. Good. What else, Manuel?
Blackberries.
Okay, maybe some berries. Very good. Okay, and where might a bear live? What might a bear use for shelter? Raise your hand. What might a bear use for shelter? What do you think, Jordan?
A habitat or under a tree.
Maybe under or inside of a hollowed out tree. What else maybe, Jocelyn? Maybe a cave. Very good. And raise your hand and tell me, is a bear an herbivore, a carnivore, or an omnivore? Layla? Omnivore, which means it eats meat and plants. Very good. Okay, now we are going to practice some words today. We're going to practice a new vocabulary word. I'm going to read a sentence. with our word in it. This squirrel might nibble on an acorn or two now, but it will also bury and store many acorns underground, so it will have them in the winter when other food is hard to find. Everybody say the word store. Store means to save for future use. When warm weather arrives, I store my winter hat and gloves in a box in the closet. Do we sometimes store food? Yeah. Okay, what other things might we store or put away for later? What other things might we store or put away for later? Elliot?
Toys.
We might store our toys for later. What else, Layla?
Sometimes our snacks.
You might store a snack for later. Good. Okay, I'm going to say 3 words. Store, stockpile, and save. Okay, I'm going to write these words on the board. And all of these words have a similar meaning, but we're going to talk about the difference. Store, stockpile, and save. Okay, say them with me. Store, stockpile, save. All 3 of these words they all mean to save something, but they have a little bit of a different meaning. If you are going to save something, it means you're going to save a little bit for later. If you're going to store something, you're going to save a medium amount for later. If you're going to stockpile, you're going to save a lot for later, okay? So I'm going to give you a sentence with a blank, and you decide which word should go in the sentence. Save means a little bit. Store means a medium amount. Stockpile means a lot, okay? So if I said you're going to blank your lunch for later, which one of those words would go in that blank? What do you think? Store. Who has a different answer? Save, because it's just something little. Save means a little amount. Okay, listen to the next sentence. The school will blank all of the books from the school for the summer. All of the books of the school. What do you think, Kellen? Stockpile, because that's a large amount. And I blank my toys in a toy box. What do you think? Store, a medium amount. Very good. So you might hear some of those words. When you do, just know that they mean to save something for later. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about another word. And this is a multiple meaning word. I'm going to show you a picture. And I want to see if you think you might know what this multiple meaning word is. Look at these pictures, okay? And as you're looking at the picture, I want you to try to think of a word that might have 2 meanings. It's a multiple meaning word that could describe both of these pictures. What do you think the word might be? Look at the picture. What do you think the word might be? It's going to be the same word, but it's going to have 2 different meanings. What is on the outside of a tree? And what does a dog do? Raise your hand if you thought of the word. Bark. Good. So I want you guys to be familiar that some words are multiple meaning words. They have more than one meaning. If I said bark and you were thinking about a tree, raise your hand and tell me what word are you thinking of. If I said bark and you were thinking about a tree, what word would you be thinking of? What would you be thinking of if you were describing bark and you're thinking of a tree? Tell me about the bark on a tree. Okay, listen, and maybe somebody else can help you. Okay, what do you think about when you think of the bark on a tree? Violet?
Wood.
It's wood. Okay, what color is it? Kind of a brownish color, and it's on the outside of a tree. What do you think about when you hear the word bark, but we're talking about a dog? Demarion? If you think of a dog and you think of the word bark, what does that mean? Are we talking about the wood on a tree when we're talking about, what are we talking about? What does the dog do? It barks. It makes a noise. So when you think of bark, when we're talking about a dog, you are thinking of the noise that a dog makes, okay? So I want you to be familiar with words that have multiple meanings, because sometimes we hear words that are the same. They sound the same, but they have different meanings, okay? Yes, Jordan?
You know that I don't like rice?
You don't like rice?
But last night, I tried rice, but it was very delicious. And I tried steak with chicken too.
Well, that means you are an omnivore.
But look at this. I'm an omnivore.
You're getting strong. All right, now let's listen. And we've talked about deciduous forest today. We've learned a lot of things about the deciduous forest. We've learned about animals. We've learned about plants. And we're also familiar with this type of forest because we can see deciduous forests here in Tennessee. So in just a few minutes, you are going to write a couple of sentences. Make sure you're listening. You are going to write a couple of sentences about the deciduous forest in your journal. So I'm going to give you your journals in a few minutes. You're going to write 2 complete sentences about the deciduous forest. Make sure you have what at the beginning of your sentence? Capital letter. What should you have at the end? Punctuation mark. And make sure you've got good spaces. And when you come to a word that you don't know how to spell, what should you do? Try to sound it out, tap it out, okay? Raise your hand. Let's give our friends some ideas of what we could write about. When you go to your seat, I want you to be ready to write. So raise your hand and give me some ideas of your sentences that you could write in just a minute when you go to your seat, okay? Tell me some things you've learned about the deciduous forest. It could be about an animal, a plant. It could be about the climate. Let me see some hands. And if you don't know what to write about, you need to be listening to your friends so that when you get to your seat, you know exactly what to write, okay? What could you write about, Kellen? Think about some of the animals. Okay, you could talk about the seasons because we know a deciduous forest has how many seasons? 4 seasons. So you could write about that. What else could you write about in a minute, Jackson?
There's 400 types of bugs in the forest.
That we learned about. There are 400 different types of animals that live in the Smoky Mountains, which was the deciduous forest we learned about today. Jocelyn? You could write some of the facts that you learned about bears. What else?
We learned about.
Think about another animal.
Can I give you more minutes?
Yeah. Elliot?
About bears hibernate.
We could talk about how bears hibernate. Think about some other animals we learned about. Violet? Squirrels. What do you know about squirrels?
That they gather or acorns and store them in their home.
Very good. Very good. So I want everybody to close your eyes, okay? I want you to think about some of the facts that you could write about. Think about the pictures that we saw today. Think about the animals that we read about. I want you to think about some facts that you're going to write about in just a minute, okay? All right. Now, I'm going to give you your journals. When you go to your sheet, you can go ahead and get your pencil out. You're going to turn to page 9 in your journal. Manuel, was this yours?
This is the sharpen.
Don't work on your picture yet. I want you writing your sentences first. What are you going to write about? Think about an animal we talked about today. Tell me.
A dog.
We did not learn about a dog today. Think about the pictures that we read about. The animals that live in the forest.
Owl.
An owl. What do you know about the great job? One of your sentences to me. Raise your hand if you can read one of your sentences to me. Kellen? Very good. He was writing a sentence about when the plants move towards the sun. Jocelyn? Good. A bear is the type of animal that lives in the deciduous forest. Layla?
In the deciduous forest, there's steady rain.
In the deciduous forest, there's steady rain. Very good. Elliot? In the winter, bears hibernate. Camille?
In the day, the owls sleep and in the night.
Very good. The owls sleep during the day and they hunt at night. Jordan?
The deer use their antlers to attack predators.
Oh, very good. The deer use their antlers to attack predators. You guys have done a great job with your learning today and with your sentences. We have now learned about 4 different types of habitats. We've learned about the tundra, We have learned about the desert. We have learned about the savanna grasslands. And today, what did we learn about? The deciduous forest. So you guys have so much knowledge about all these habitats. I am so proud of how hard you worked today. Excellent job.